Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we talk about television history, especially the Golden Age dramas, we talk about the big moments.
Right.
The explosions, the shocking deaths, the train heists.
The water cooler moments, basically.
Exactly, the water cooler moments. We talk about those scenes where you just, jump off your couch and scream at the screen. But today, we are doing something a little different.
We are.
We're looking at a moment in television history that I think perfectly defines the phrase tipping point. But not because it's loud. In fact, it's excruciatingly quiet, it's awkward, it's really messy.
And honestly, it is a little hard to watch.
It is. We are going all the way down into the murky, uncomfortable waters of Breaking Bad. Specifically, we are looking at Season 3, Episode 4.
Titled Green Light.
Green Light. Now, if you are a fan of the show, you might remember this as the specific hour where the entire carefully constructed world of Walter White just, it crumbles.
It's a complete study in meltdowns.
That is the perfect word for it. Meltdowns. We aren't looking at the high-octane cartel stuff today. We are looking at the messy, awkward, human failures that happen when pride gets in the way of logic. So let's unpack this. This episode originally aired on April 11th, 2010. Can you believe it's been that long?
It feels like yesterday in terms of the cultural impact, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, April 2010, the landscape of TV was so different back then. Lost was wrapping up, Mad Men was right in its prime, and here was Breaking Bad, really finding its footing in Season 3.
And just to set the stage for everyone listening, because even if you've seen the show multiple times, it is easy to forget exactly where we are in the timeline. The characters at this exact point are completely out of their comfort zones.
They're truly unmoored.
They are flailing. And usually when characters flail on this show, people get physically hurt. But in Greenlight, the hurt it's different. It's highly psychological.
It's humiliation.
Yeah.
That is the core theme running through this entire hour.
Right. And to guide us through this analysis today, we have pulled a massive stack of sources. We are looking at detailed plot summaries, production notes, and we've also got the critical reception from the time it aired. So we have reviews from IGN, the AV Club, and some retrospective rankings from places like The Ringer and Vulture.
And looking at those reviews is going to be incredibly crucial later on.
Oh, yeah.
Because, interestingly enough, critics were actually a bit divided on this one. It was not universally loved immediately.
No, it wasn't.
Some people thought it was too slow. Some people thought it was way too cringy.
Which is wild to think about now, considering how revered the season is. But our mission today is to figure out why. Why is Green Light, which is often ranked relatively low by critics compared to the rest of the series, actually one of the most crucial turning points for Walter White, Jesse Pinkman, and Hank Schrader?
It's the quiet before the storm. But it's also the exact moment where the internal logic of these characters shifts irrevocably. Honestly, if you skip this episode, the rest of the series just doesn't make sense.
Before we get into the heavy psychological stuff, let's give credit where it's due. The creative team behind this meltdown masterpiece. The episode was written by Sam Catlin.
A truly fantastic writer who really, really gets the dark humor of the show.
He does. And it was directed by Scott Winnett. Now, here is a surprising fact I found in the production notes. Scott Winnett only directed 2 episodes of the entire series.
Just 2. That feels really low given how distinct the visual style is here.
I know, right? I was shocked. He directed Green Light and, wait for it, Crawl Space.
Oh, wow. Crawl Space.
Yeah.
Okay, that actually changes how I view Green Light entirely.
How so?
Because Crawl Space, for anyone who needs a quick refresher, is arguably the most terrifying, claustrophobic episode of the entire run. It's the one where Walt is laughing maniacally in the dirt under his house while the camera pulls slowly up, looking exactly like he's in a grave.
Exactly. The visual language in that scene is iconic.
See, that makes perfect sense now. If you think about the visual language and the sheer intensity of Crawl Space, and then you look at Green Light, Winnett clearly has a profound knack for capturing characters who were totally trapped.
Trapped by their own choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though his run on the show was super limited, his impact was massive. He inherently understands how to film desperation.
Mm-hmm.
In Crawl Space, the desperation is literal life-or-death terror.
Right.
But in Green Light, the desperation is social and professional suicide. But the camera work, the way he isolates the characters in the frame, it is remarkably similar.
It's 47 minutes of pure desperation. So let's dive into the first part of this disaster. We have to talk about Walter White. Because in this episode, we are witnessing a professional and personal implosion that is just, honestly, it makes you want to cover your eyes.
It is visceral.
Hmm.
And it's really important to remember exactly where Walt's head is at right now.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a big shot. He fully believes he is Heisenberg. He's been dealing with literal drug lords. He's negotiated massive deals. He's survived explosions. So he walks into this episode with a certain swagger.
A completely unearned swagger in the context of the real civilian world.
Precisely.
Let's start with the confrontation at Beneke Fabricators. We know Skylar is working there. We know she's had an affair with her boss, Ted Beneke. And Walt does not handle rejection well.
To put it mildly. And remember, Skylar's using this affair as a weapon. She is actively trying to push Walt away to discuss him into granting a divorce.
But Walt, being Walt, decides that the problem isn't his meth cooking or his lying. The problem is this other guy.
Right.
So the plot detail here is that Walt creates a massive, embarrassing public scene at Skylar's workplace. He marches in there to confront Ted. And I really want to talk about the way the scene is shot. The office is bright. It's incredibly clean. There are neat little plants. There's glass everywhere.
It is a fishbowl.
And here comes Walt, looking completely disheveled, angry, bringing this dark, chaotic energy right into the sterile environment. He marches right up to Ted's office.
And think about what this represents for Walt. Walt is a guy who, especially by season 3, prides himself on being the danger. He operates in the shadows. He controls life and death. But here, in the bright fluorescent lights of a legitimate office building, he has zero power. His tough guy Heisenberg stare just does not work on a corporate receptionist.
None at all. And the result is deeply humiliating. He tries to intimidate Ted. He gets right in his face. But Ted isn't Tuco. Ted isn't Gus. Ted is just a boring businessman who calmly calls security.
And that is the central clash. Walt is playing by cartel rules. He's thinking, I will intimidate my rival. But he is in a civilian setting. And in the civilian world, if you yell at someone, they don't cower in fear. They call the cops or they have you thrown out.
Which is exactly what happens. He literally gets physically escorted, practically carried out of the building.
Yeah.
But he doesn't leave quietly. He picks up that massive potted plant.
The potted plant. It is such a pathetic gesture.
He hurls it at the glass. It's a tantrum. It's literally a toddler's tantrum.
It is a total loss of territorial control. He tries to bring his drug lord energy into the civilian world, and the civilian world just unequivocally rejects it. He's loud, he's visible, and ultimately, he's completely impotent. It's a stark contrast to how we usually see him. Usually, he's the smartest guy in the room. Here, he's just the crazy ex-husband causing a scene in a lobby.
And that rejection just fuels the fire, because immediately after getting tossed out of Beneke Fabricators, he spirals even further. He doesn't go home to cool off. He doesn't take a breath and reflect.
He creates a domino effect, or rather, he starts aggressively kicking over the dominoes himself.
He really does. The next major beat involves Saul Goodman. Now, Mike Ehrmantraut, everyone's favorite cleaner, takes Walt directly to Saul's office.
Which usually means serious business is about to happen. Mike is the calmest person in the universe, so if Mike is physically driving you somewhere, it is serious.
Right. And Saul wants Walt to cook. That is the constant underlying pressure of this season. But things go sideways incredibly fast. Walt discovers that Saul has bugged his house.
Which, to be fair to Saul, is a very Saul thing to do.
It really is.
He is just trying to protect his investment. He desperately needs to know if Skylar's going to the police.
Sure, from a criminal standpoint, it makes sense. But Walt doesn't see it that way. He feels profoundly violated. And then Saul makes a mistake. A very big mistake. He tries to bond with Walt. He makes some, let's call them crude remarks about Skylar's affair with Ted.
Yeah, he makes a joke about Skylar's taste in men.
And that is the match in the powder keg. You simply cannot joke about Walt's masculinity. That is the one line you do not cross.
Walt completely loses it. And this isn't the calculated, cool violence of blowing up Tuco's office. This is messy. He physically tackles Saul.
It's essentially two middle-aged men in bad suits awkwardly rolling around on the floor.
It is. It is pathetic.
It's not a cool cinematic fight scene. It's grunting and flailing. Saul is yelling about his barn door being open. It's utterly ridiculous.
But the consequences are not ridiculous. Walt gets up, straightens his jacket, and fires him. He looks at him and says, "You're done."
Yeah.
This is a massive critical error on Walt's part. It is a meltdown, pure and simple. By firing Saul, he isn't just firing a sleazy lawyer. He is cutting off his entire money laundering capability. He is severing the vital link to the criminal underworld that actually protects him. Saul is the buffer. Without Saul, Walt is completely exposed.
And the ripple effects are immediate. The source material points out something really sad here. Walter White Jr. Flynn is running that fundraising website, right? Save Walter White.
Right. The website that Saul cleverly set up to funnel the drug money to the family so it looks like anonymous charity donations.
And immediately after Walt fires Saul, Walter Jr. notices that the donations to the site have completely stopped.
Because Saul was the one pressing the button.
Exactly. So Walt's ego, his sheer inability to handle a tacky joke about his wife's affair, literally stops the money flow that is supposedly the whole reason he got into this business for his family. He hurts his son, he hurts his financial future, all because he couldn't take a joke.
It perfectly highlights the immense fragility of his ego.
Yeah.
He would literally rather blow up his entire operation than swallow his pride or admit that he has been cuckolded. He is prioritizing his own feeling of being disrespected over the actual well-being of his family.
But wait, it actually gets worse. We haven't even hit the absolute bottom here. We have the Beneke incident, the Saul incident, and then
Oh, the Carmen incident?
the Carmen incident. I have to say, when I was rewatching this for the deep dive, I actually had to pause it. I physically could not take the secondhand embarrassment.
It is arguably the most cringe-inducing moment in the entire series.
Yes.
And that includes the happy birthday song to Ted later on.
Yeah. Oh, please don't remind me of that. But yes, this might be the ultimate low point for Walter White as a human being. So let's set the scene. Walt is at the high school. He is still somehow working as a teacher. He gets called into the office of the vice principal, Carmen Molina.
A woman who has been nothing but intensely professional and kind to him. She has been highly supportive of his cancer battle. She's been a friend.
Exactly. She calls him in to talk about his erratic behavior, about his unexcused absences. It's a standard disciplinary meeting. But Walt is living in a completely different reality.
He's still heavily riding the adrenaline of his anger from this Saul and Ted encounters. He is feeling this deeply twisted sense of entitlement.
And what does Walt do? He horribly misreads the entire situation. He starts intensely staring at her. He compliments her eyes.
That nice eyes.
And then he makes a pass at her. He tries to forcefully kiss her. He leans entirely across the desk and just tries to plant one on her.
It is excruciating. The heavy silence in the room before and after is just thick.
It's deeply painful. And obviously she rejects him. She pulls back, completely shocked. But it's not just a personal rejection. She immediately places him on indefinite leave.
Which is standard administrative code for, you are fired, but we are being nice about it because you have terminal cancer and we really don't want a lawsuit.
Right. So let's just pause and look at the scoreboard here. In the span of about half an episode, Walt has been physically thrown out of his wife's office. He has assaulted and fired his criminal lawyer, and he has sexually harassed his boss and lost his only legitimate job.
Talk about aggressively burning bridges.
It is a scorched earth policy on his own life.
And what's truly fascinating here is the sheer awkwardness and deep desperation of that move on Carmen. It is not a romantic gesture.
Not at all.
It's not like he's secretly been harboring a crush on her for years. It is a raw attempt to assert dominance.
You really think so?
Absolutely. Think about the pattern of his day. He feels totally powerless with Skylar because she's sleeping with Ted. He feels powerless with Ted because Ted had him thrown out. He feels powerless with Saul because Saul was openly mocking him. So he retreats to the one place where he usually has absolute authority at school.
Yeah.
And he tries to exert physical power over Carmen. He thinks, I am Heisenberg. I can take whatever I want.
He's applying the ruthless logic of the drug trade to a suburban vice principal's office.
Exactly. And it backfires spectacularly. He genuinely thinks his newfound alpha status is sexually magnetic. But to Carmen and to the audience, he's just a sad, sick, inappropriate chemistry teacher. It reveals just how deeply delusional Walt has become. He thinks the world sees him as a terrifying kingpin, but the world just sees a pathetic man falling apart.
It really is the final nail in the coffin for Walt's respectable citizen persona. There is absolutely no going back to being Mr. White, the mild-mannered chemistry teacher after that.
No, that door is permanently closed.
Yeah.
And he was the one who slammed it shut.
So while Walt is busy violently imploding, just setting his entire life on fire, we have Jesse Pinkman. And Jesse is on a completely different trajectory in this episode.
It's almost a perfect inverse trajectory.
Right. Let's move to this next part of the story. Jesse Pinkman's rise and independence. Because while Walt is acting like a spoiled child, Jesse is, well, he's dealing with some very real adult problems.
He is, and he's dealing with them in a way that shows he has actually learned a thing or two from Walt.
It starts with the gas station dilemma. I absolutely love this scene because it's so incredibly tense, but also so completely mundane. The cinematography here is fantastic. It's gritty, it's washed out. Jesse is at a convenience store. He needs gas, he needs cigarettes, but he is entirely short on cash.
Which is deeply ironic considering how millions of dollars are theoretically floating around in this business. But Jesse is dead broke.
He is scraping for literal pennies. So what does he do? He pulls out a tiny little baggie of the blue meth.
The blue sky.
Right. He tries to bribe the cashier with meth. He tells her this is worth way more than $20.
And let's look at the cashier for a second. This young woman, she is understandably hesitant. She's looking at him like he is completely insane. But then the tension dramatically ramps up. A uniformed police officer queues up right behind him.
This is a classic Breaking Bad squeeze. The editing here is just so incredibly tight. Cut to the cop. Cut to Jesse. Cut to the cashier.
And the sound design drops out a bit, intensely focusing on the sharp ringing of the cash register.
Yeah.
It's incredibly claustrophobic.
It is. The cashier clearly sees the cop. Jesse sees the cop. The cashier realizes that if she makes a scene or if she loudly refuses, the cop might intervene. And then suddenly there are illegal drugs on the counter right in front of him.
So she makes a rapid panic calculation. It is ultimately safer to just quietly take the drugs and get this twitchy guy out of here than to cause a fuss. She bows to the immediate pressure.
What really stands out to me in this scene is the immense risk. Jesse is living on a razor's edge here. He's frantic. He is literally bartering with a felony in front of a police officer for a single tank of gas. It contrasts so sharply with the highly calculated business moves he makes later in the episode. Here, he's a desperate street junkie hustling. Later, he acts like a major player.
And that contrast is absolutely key. It shows us exactly where Jesse starts the episode, desperate, low level. But it also shows his raw resourcefulness. He survives that terrifying encounter.
Let's talk about that major shift. Because Jesse isn't just selling baggies for gas money anymore. He is cooking. He cooks a brand new batch entirely on his own. He diligently follows the recipe. He brings it to Walt, looking for maybe approval, maybe a partnership.
Probably a bit of both. Jesse still deeply looks up to Walt, despite everything they've been through. He wants Mr. White to look at it and say, good job, you actually learned.
And what does Walt do? He totally dismisses it. He looks at the crystal and coldly calls it substandard.
Substandard. That specific word cuts so deep.
Now, we really have to ask the critical question here. Is the product actually bad?
That is the million-dollar question. And if you pay attention to the visuals, the glass is a perfect blue. It is clear. The shards are large. It looks exactly like Walt's pristine product.
So is Walt just straight up lying?
Knowing Walt, and knowing exactly what we know about Jesse's developing skills by this point, remember, Jesse's been paying very close attention. It is highly unlikely the product was actually bad. This is purely Walt's pride talking again.
It's the whole I am the singular artist mentality.
Exactly. Walt desperately needs to be the only genius in the room. If Jesse can suddenly cook the legendary blue meth without him, then Walt isn't special anymore. Walt is entirely replaceable, and Walt's fragile ego cannot handle being replaceable. So he gaslights Jesse. He tells him it's absolute garbage just to keep Jesse insecure and beneath him.
So Walt cruelly rejects him. He thinks that by rejecting him, he's firmly putting Jesse back in his place. But this is exactly where Jesse surprises us. Instead of sulking or giving up or going on a self-destructive bender, he decides to completely bypass the gatekeeper.
He makes a massive power move, a legitimate, high-level business pivot.
He firmly resolves to sell the product to Gus Fring directly.
Which is incredibly bold. Gus Fring is a terrifying figure.
Very bold. He uses Saul and Mike as mediators, even though Walt has quite literally just fired Saul. He says, I have the product, I want the deal. He knows the exact market value of what he is holding.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Gus actually agrees.
Gus Fring, the most meticulous, cautious man in the world, agrees to buy meth from a known user who just hours ago bribed a gas station clerk.
Well, see, that is the terrifying genius of Gus Fring. He reluctantly agrees to buy Jesse's product. But we have to look closely at the why. Gus isn't just buying meth. He doesn't need Jesse's few measly pounds of meth. He has a massive super lab waiting. He has an entire international supply chain.
So what exactly is he buying?
He is buying leverage, pure and simple. He is buying a wedge to aggressively drive between Jesse and Walt. Or, more accurately, he is buying a surefire way to manipulate Walt.
How so? Walk us through that.
Gus is a master student of human nature. He knows Walt significantly better than Walt knows himself. He correctly anticipates that Walt's massive pride and his pressing financial need. now that he's stupidly fired Saul and lost his teaching job, will eventually drag Walt kicking and screaming back into the fold if he sees Jesse succeeding with his formula.
That is so deeply Machiavellian.
It is 4D chess. Gus knows that the absolute quickest way to get Walt to cook again is not to politely ask him. It's to show him that someone else, specifically someone Walt considers vastly inferior, like Jesse is out there doing it and getting paid millions for it. He is expertly weaponizing Walt's own massive ego against him.
It's brilliant. So Jesse genuinely thinks he's making a big boy business move, but really, he's just a pawn in Gus's incredibly complex game to capture the king.
Precisely. Jesse feels highly empowered. He's thinking, I sold to the big man, but the big man is just using him as bait on a hook.
Wow. Okay, so Walt is melting down. Jesse has leveled up, or at least thinks he has. Now let's look at the collateral damage of all this. Because the sheer explosion of Walt's life sends dangerous shrapnel everywhere, we need to talk about Skylar and Hank.
The two people standing closest to the fire.
Let's start with Skylar. We call this section Skylar's Cold War in the notes. She is continuing the affair with Ted Beneke.
Yes, but the internal dynamic has shifted entirely. Before, the affair was a secret, empowering rebellion. Now, after Walt's insane outburst, it is out in the open, at least at the office.
It is. After Walt's plant-throwing outburst, her coworkers are incredibly suspicious. It's tense. They are whispering. But Skylar puts up this massive emotional wall. She outright refuses to tell Ted what is actually going on.
Ted explicitly offers to let her move in, right? He desperately wants to be the knight in shining armor rescuing her. He says, pack a bag, bring the kids, come to my place.
And she completely declines. She shuts him down cold.
That refusal is extremely key. Why does she refuse? Because Skylar is acting out against Walt by sleeping with Ted, but she isn't actually moving on. She isn't in love with Ted.
She's just using him.
In a way, yes, she is. She is trapping herself in an entirely new lie while desperately trying to escape the old one. She's profoundly isolated. She can't tell Ted the truth. She can't say, oh, by the way, my husband is a major meth dealer and a murderer, so she has to suffer entirely in silence. She can't give Ted the necessary context for why Walt is acting crazy, so she just has to look like the erratic woman with the violently crazy husband.
She's just as horribly alone as Walt is, in a way.
She really is. And she is slowly realizing that having an affair doesn't actually solve the fundamental problem of being married to a terrifying criminal. It just adds another massive layer of complication.
And then there is Hank. Oh, Hank.
Hank Schrader. This specific storyline breaks my heart every single time I watch it.
We see Hank's dark obsession really take firm hold here. The plot point is that Hank is supposed to finally go back to El Paso.
The big promotion, the elite task force, the exact job every ambitious cop wants.
Right. But at the very last minute, he completely ditches the assignment.
He bails.
Yeah.
He literally turns the car around, or rather stubbornly refuses to get on the plane.
He confidently claims he has a brand new lead on the blue meth. And where exactly does this lead come from? It comes from the blurry ATM images at the gas station.
Connecting right back to Jesse's desperate bribe in segment 2. See how incredibly tight this writing is? Jesse's tiny, panicked mistake immediately becomes Hank's entire lifeline.
Everything is deeply connected. So Hank sees the blue meth is back on the streets. He tracks down the cashier. He intensely questions her. He is almost manic about it. He's aggressively showing her photos. He's leaning in way too close.
And notice the crucial interaction with Steve Gomez here. Gomez is his partner, his closest friend. Gomez is deeply concerned. He gently asks about Hank's mental well-being. He knows Hank is dodging El Paso. He says, hey man, aren't you supposed to be at the airport right now?
But Hank completely dismisses him. He snaps at him. He angrily insists he is close to something big.
If we tightly connect this to the bigger thematic picture, and actually the critics at the AV Club noted this perfectly, Hank constantly presents himself as this guy who is fully in charge. He is the tough, unshakable cop. But really, he's totally out of his comfort zone.
It's severe PTSD, isn't it?
It is absolutely implied, deeply untreated PTSD. Remember the horrific turtle bomb in season 2? Hank saw his colleagues brutally blown apart. He is absolutely terrified of going back to El Paso, where he witnessed that extreme cartel-level violence. He mentally cannot handle it.
So the blue meth case isn't just a regular case to him.
No, it is a psychological shield. He is burying himself obsessively in this local case, the blue meth, to completely avoid facing that trauma. He's not chasing the blue meth because it's the most logical, pressing police work. He's chasing it because it is his safety blanket. It keeps him firmly in Albuquerque. It keeps him safe.
That is deeply tragic. He is destroying himself internally to feel safe externally. He's alienating his partner, risking his entire career, all because he is way too afraid to admit that he is afraid.
And in doing so, he is ironically inching closer to the very immense danger he thinks he's carefully controlling. He's blindly hunting Heisenberg to avoid the cartel, not realizing they're rapidly becoming one and the same.
So we have all these incredibly tense threads tangling together. Walt's humiliating failure, Jesse's bold deal, Skylar's painful silence, Hank's dark obsession, and it all culminates in the climax of the episode, the literal meaning of green light.
This is exactly where the symbolism really hits home. The final sequence of this episode is a sheer masterclass in visual storytelling.
So let's carefully set the scene. Jesse makes the physical delivery to Victor. This is Gus's guy, the scary, silent guy who doesn't talk much.
Right.
But there is a massive twist. Jesse gets the money, but he is instantly outraged because he only gets half the money. He quickly counts and goes, "Where's the rest?"
He did all the backbreaking work, he took all the physical risk, but the envelope is extremely light.
Why? Because Gus is masterfully playing the game. Victor coldly tells him, "That's your half. The other half goes to your partner."
Meaning Walt.
Even though Walt emphatically did not cook it.
Exactly. Gus is forcefully binding them back together.
The scene shifts. Walt is stopped at a normal red light. He's just sitting there in his horrible Aztec. He looks completely defeated. And Victor suddenly pulls up right next to him.
The underlying tension here is palpable. Walt looks over, deeply confused.
Victor casually tosses a heavy bag directly into Walt's open window. It aggressively lands on the passenger seat. It is the other half of the illicit earnings.
Your half.
Walt didn't cook it. Walt explicitly rejected it. But he gets paid for it anyway.
It is Gus clearly saying, we are in business together whether you like it or not. You are irrevocably involved. I am paying you highly for your genius formula, even if you arbitrarily decide you aren't the one actively using it. It's a very sharp hook.
And then the radio. This is the part that actually gave me chills when I reread the notes. While Walt is sitting there, silently staring at this heavy bag of drug money, a local news report comes on the radio.
The ultimate guilt trip. The universe heavily weighing in.
The news report calmly states that Donald Margolis has been rushed to the hospital after a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
And for those who might need a quick refresher, Donald Margolis is Jane's deeply grieving father.
Jane, Jesse's girlfriend, who tragically died of an overdose while Walt coldly watched and did absolutely nothing to save her.
And Donald Margolis is also the distracted air traffic controller who, because of his profound, mind-numbing grief over Jane, accidentally caused the massive mid-air collision directly over Albuquerque in the previous season. The Wayfarer 515 disaster.
So the entire universe is literally screaming at Walt through his car radio.
It really is. Think deeply about the layers here. He is physically holding a bag of dirty money derived directly from the drug trade. That specific trade killed Jane. Jane's death completely broke her father. Her father's immense grief caused the horrific plane crash. And now, her father has actively tried to kill himself. Every single massive tragedy in the last 2 seasons can be directly traced straight back to Walt's selfish decisions.
The sheer weight of that. I mean, how does he not just intentionally drive his car straight into a brick wall?
He stares at the money. He intensely listens to the radio. He is starkly faced with the ultimate undeniable evidence of his own extreme toxicity.
And then the brilliant visual direction kicks in. This is the actual title sequence moment.
Yes. Victor tosses the money. The grim news report plays. Walt steers blankly ahead. And then the traffic light turns green.
Green light.
Definitely not subtle, but it is incredibly powerful.
What does it mean to you, fundamentally? Because obviously it literally means go, but...
It's highly multi-layered. On the absolute surface, green light represents Gus formally giving the go-ahead to the massive business operation. The lab is live. The money has physically changed hands. But on a much deeper, profound character level, it represents the entire world relentlessly moving on.
The world moving on.
The light turns green, normal traffic moves, regular life continues. The ordinary cars behind him start to impatiently honk. The world absolutely does not stop just because Walt is suddenly feeling guilty. The massive machinery of life and the ruthless machinery of the drug trade just keeps churning forward.
And Walt.
Walt is totally stagnant. He's just sitting there, completely paralyzed by the dirty money and the overwhelming guilt. But the light is green. He is being forced to move.
That is powerful. The universe is entirely indifferent to his internal suffering. It just loudly says go.
And he has to make a choice right then. Do I sit here and face the music, or do I hit the gas? Do I fully accept the green light and become the absolute villain, or do I finally stop?
And we all know exactly what he eventually chooses.
He hits the gas. He always hits the gas.
Man. Okay, let's take a deep breath. That is an incredibly heavy ending. But we really need to look at how this episode was received, because as you mentioned right at the top, it wasn't a slam dunk for everyone at the time. It's incredibly easy for us to sit here comfortably in 2026 and loudly say masterpiece, but back in 2010, not so much.
No, it really wasn't.
Let's look at segment 5, critical reception and legacy. Back in 2010, Seth Amidon from IGN, who usually absolutely loved the show, gave it an 8 out of 10.
Which is technically a solid score, but for Breaking Bad, that's actually a little remarkably lukewarm. Usually they were consistently pulling 9s and 10s across the board.
Right. And I want to read exactly what he wrote because it's fascinating in hindsight. He said, quote, "Two horrible meltdowns aren't so fun to watch." And he explicitly suggested that the series was lagging in quality since season 2.
It's lagging in quality?
Yeah.
It is honestly so funny to hear that now, knowing exactly how explosive Season 3 ends and how Season 4 is widely considered a television masterpiece. But I entirely get it. At the time, week to week, people were impatient. They eagerly wanted the thrill. They wanted crazy Tuco. They wanted giant explosions.
They wanted the fun of the crime.
Exactly. And Amit's specific point about fun that is crucial to unpack is Breaking Bad actually supposed to be fun?
That is a really good debate. I mean, throwing the pizza on the roof is incredibly fun. Using giant magnets to destroy a laptop is fun.
Sure, there's brilliant dark comedy, but this specific episode, watching a sick, middle-aged man awkwardly fight his sleazy lawyer and get coldly rejected by a vice principal,
Yeah.
that is absolutely not fun. It's deeply uncomfortable. It's pure cringe comedy entirely without the comedy. It's reality TV levels of sheer awkwardness.
So the core critique was basically, this is too horribly real. This is too depressing to watch.
Yes. It felt to some like the narrative wheels were just spinning. But in clear hindsight, we know that the wheels firmly weren't spinning. They were aggressively digging deep traction into the mud so the narrative car could violently launch forward later.
Noel Murray from the AV Club gave it a B.
A B. That is a very fine, acceptable grade.
But he was definitely a bit more positive about the underlying themes. He praised the delicate balance of action and inaction, and he specifically pointed out Hank's deep struggle as a highlight.
Yeah, Murray clearly understood that the episode was heavily about the deep psychology of the characters. He astutely noted that it's fundamentally about how someone who consistently represents himself as fully in charge desperately deals with being totally out of his comfort zone. That perfectly captures both Hank and Walt. Hank constantly pretends to be the unbreakable super cop. Walt constantly pretends to be the untouchable kingpin. Both are spectacularly failing at the exact same time.
What about the retrospective rankings, though? When we look back from 2019 or later, does time generally heal all wounds?
Surprisingly, no. It still consistently ranks very low. The Ringer definitively ranked it 56th out of 62 total episodes. Vulture ranked it 49th overall.
56th out of 62. That is absolute bottom tier for a show this good.
It really is.
Why do you think that is? Is it strictly just because it's widely viewed as a setup episode?
I heavily think so. It is a necessary bridge. It carefully moves the essential pieces from A to B. It totally lacks the explosive, shocking violence of 1 minute, which comes just a few short episodes later, or the intense, thrilling heist energy of Dead Freight. It is fundamentally an episode about embarrassing failure. And watching failure is just inherently hard to rewatch.
It's basically the Scott's Tots of Breaking Bad episodes.
That is a genuinely great analogy. It is absolutely the Scott's Tots. You desperately want to look away. You want to immediately skip the painful scene with Carmen. You want to fast forward the awkward fight with Saul. It literally makes your skin crawl.
But despite the vocal critics saying it was noticeably lagging, the audience was definitely still showing up.
Yes. The raw viewership data is highly interesting. The episode had 1.46 million live viewers. That was noticeably up from 1.33 million for the extremely tense previous episode, IFT.
So even if the official critics were openly saying, meh, the actual audience was steadily growing.
The word of mouth was rapidly spreading. People intuitively knew something massive was building, even if this specific hour was a bit of a psychological slow burn.
So what does this all ultimately mean? We've deeply unpacked the plot, the underlying psychology, the contemporary reviews. Let's cleanly summarize the key takeaways for everyone.
Sure.
In 47 short minutes, we vividly saw Walt lose his family, his lawyer, and his only legitimate job.
We clearly saw Jesse vigorously prove he can actually cook and confidently engage in high-level business, even if he's secretly being manipulated. And we painfully saw Hank repeatedly prove that he absolutely cannot let go of this case, because truly letting go means finally facing his own terrifying demons.
And for you, the listener sitting at home, why exactly should you care about Greenlight?
I think this very specific episode profoundly teaches us a deeply timeless lesson.
Pride inevitably precedes the fall. Walt's massive, unchecked pride completely destroys his entire safety net. But also, it clearly teaches us that desperately trying to aggressively control everything usually leads directly to abruptly losing control of absolutely everything. Walt forcefully tries to control Skyler, Saul, and the entire drug trade. He predictably ends up with absolutely nothing but a heavy bag of cash he didn't even earn and a crushing guilty conscience.
That is the ultimate irony. He violently wants control, but he has literally never been more out of control in his entire life.
Exactly.
Okay, we are wrapping up, but right before we go, I really want to linger on something you briefly mentioned earlier about Gus Fring.
The ultimate puppet master.
We talked extensively about how Gus strategically bought the meth to heavily manipulate Walt, but let's zoom way out for a second. You had a really profound thought about free will in this particular universe.
I do. And this is something I really want everyone listening to truly sit with. We enthusiastically watch Breaking Bad, and we constantly harshly judge the characters for their poor choices. We say, why did Walt do that? Or why didn't Jesse just finally leave?
Right, we literally scream at the TV, don't get in the car.
But look closely at Greenlight. Look at the exact mechanics of it. Walt is entirely reacting to Gus's surprise money drop. Jesse is entirely reacting to his own crippling addiction and poverty. Hank is entirely reacting to his massive untreated trauma. Skyler is reacting entirely to Walt's unending lies.
Everyone is just reacting.
Is anyone actually initiating anything? Is anyone actually actively driving the car?
Maybe Gus.
Maybe Gus. But honestly, even Gus is constantly reacting to the violent cartel, desperately protecting his own massive territory. The profound question I want to firmly leave you with today is this. In this deeply toxic ecosystem, is anyone actually making a genuine free choice? Or is absolutely everyone just traffic?
Just traffic.
Just cars helplessly stopped at a red light, blindly waiting for a powerful external force to suddenly turn it green. And when it finally turns green, they mindlessly move. Not because they actually want to, but entirely because the light changed, because the strict circumstances completely dictated it.
So Walt isn't necessarily breaking bad. He's just being violently pushed bad.
Or maybe the green light isn't permission at all. Maybe it's a ruthless test, and absolutely everyone spectacularly fails it.
Wow. That is terrifyingly bleak.
Oh, that's Breaking Bad.
True. Well, on that highly cheerful note, we are officially going to sign off. Thank you so much for listening to this extensive deep dive into the absolute psychological wreckage of Walter White. We will definitely see you on the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you on the next deep dive.